So I'm going to do a bit of a different video, and I'm going to play one of these flash games from Congregate. This is a game that I played years and years and years ago actually. It's a kind of zombie decision game where your decisions will dictate how well you survive through the outbreak or not. So let's get started.
It started as a normal day, just like any other. I took a shower and grabbed a quick cup of coffee before heading out of the front door and waving goodbye to my loving wife. I jumped on board the bus, sat down, turned on my MP3 player, and promptly entered my usual daydream state. I finally arrived at my office building, headed up the 10th floor, and sat down at my desk to see a huge pile of paperwork. I sighed and got started. A scream coming from down the hall broke my concentration. I considered going to see what it was, but the thought quickly passed. Probably just another hysterical secretary overreacting to a spider. Just as I started getting back to work, something else grabbed my attention. I peered out the window into the street below, and to my astonishment, saw a scene of utter chaos. People fighting, even killing each other for seemingly no reason.
Nice.
By this time, some of my coworkers had gotten up from their desks and joined me in staring out the window.
So do we turn on the radio? Do we go down the hall to look at the television, sit back and continue to work, or go grab another cup of coffee? I'm thinking that the best odds of survival here is maybe just to check our own radio here, because I reckon if we went down the hall, there might be an outbreak there.
The radio began blurting out all kinds of information. It said that a new breed of virus had been discovered, one that would change its victims into a homicidal maniac. This virus was highly contagious and spreading rapidly. Their advice was to stay where I was, and that if I were to encounter an infected person, I should try to destroy their brain. At this point, I felt myself entering a state of mild shock. It was obvious that whatever was going on was serious, and that a significant percentage of the population were going to be killed or wounded over the course of the next few days. My thoughts quickly turned to my wife. Was she okay? What if these maniacs were near our home?
So do we take out the cell phone and try call the wife? We don't call, we just go home, or we do neither and stay in the office building. I'm going to assume that most communications will be down at this point, so I don't think there'll be any point phoning, and just staying in the office either isn't really a good thing, so we're not going to call, we're just going to head straight back home.
I knew that the phone lines would most likely be overwhelmed, so I decided not to waste time by calling. I headed straight home. I began to make my way through a series of corridors that lead to the elevator. On my way, I noticed a struggle out of the corner of my eye.
We are not going to get involved with any zombies here. Every man for themselves.
Blood was already pouring from her multiple wounds. The woman cried out for me to help her.
We are not helping here. We're not going to attack anyone. We're not going to call 911 either. I'm afraid you're already infected. Goodbye.
I continued down the hallway, ignoring the woman's cries for help. She would have been infected and it wasn't worth the risk.
Exactly.
I arrived at the elevator, but to my dismay...
If nothing else with this current coronavirus pandemic, it's every man for themselves I've found, so it's going to be every man for themselves in this as well.
The large crowd
That's maybe a bit of a cynical way to see things here, but I'm pretty sure it's the only way I'm going to survive this. And we are not getting into an elevator with other people, that's just going to be a mistake. I don't think jumping out of a 10-story building here would help, so we're going to take the stairs down.
I quickly made my way down the stairs to the ground floor. Sure, I was a little out of breath, but at least I saved time and avoided a potentially lethal situation. I eventually reached the ground floor and entered the lobby. The scene in front of me was one of extreme violence. The security team was desperately battling with a swarm of infected, and they appeared to be losing. I watched helplessly as a guard on the opposite side of the room was torn limb from limb. I noticed his gun lying on the floor just a few meters away from his dismembered corpse.
Do we run across the room, try to get the gun, make a dash for the main exit, or leave the lobby and try and escape through the rear exit? I don't think it would be a good idea to go for the main exit, because that's where most of them will be trying to head as well. We might get stuck, and I also don't know if it would be worth getting a gun, although to be able to defend ourselves might not be a bad call here. But I think our best call of action is just to get out of this building at the moment, so we'll go via the rear exit.
I managed to slip away without any infected noticing, and proceeded quickly towards the rear exit. I made my way through several corridors towards the back of the building. As I approached the rear entrance, I spotted a hefty padlock across the bolt, making it practically impossible to open without a key. I cursed my bad luck and tried to figure out my next move. The janitor would have had the key, but reaching his office would have required going back towards the lobby.
We are not going back towards the lobby at this point. We can charge down the door or search for a window to climb through. I think we'll search for a window to climb through if there is one.
I realized that breaking the door down would be impossible, and that heading back would be too dangerous.
Yep.
So I set about searching for another exit. I remembered that there was a small window in the male bathroom just a few doors down the corridor. I arrived at the bathroom door and pushed it open. Suddenly, I heard a bestial roar coming from further down the corridor. A dozen infected had spotted me and were now heading in my direction.
Oh, we might be locked in the bathroom
entered
here.
the stall and spotted the window I was thinking of. However, to my dismay, it was much smaller than I had remembered. I thought that I would probably fit, but I knew it was going to be a very tricky maneuver.
Right. Do we go straight through the window, which might be too small, we get stuck and then they can get us from the other side? Do we just hide in the cubicle and hope they pass, which, if they're being this ferocious at this point, I reckon they might just burst through the cubicle or flood the bathroom before trying the window. I don't know why flooding the bathroom would help at all here. I reckon we might be about to get stuck, but we're going straight through the window.
Not wanting to waste time, I set about trying to squeeze through the window. A few awkward movements and a lot of pain later, I managed to force my way into the street, escaping the infected with only a few seconds to spare.
I genuinely thought we were going to get stuck there.
I dropped from the window and landed on the pavement with a heavy thud. Looking up and down the quiet back street, I tried to decide what to do next. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that my best bet was to head to a main road and try to steal a vehicle or catch a lift. I jogged down the quiet street for a few hundred feet before stopping to catch my breath. I looked up briefly and saw a little girl wandering aimlessly in the middle of the road.
Do we walk up and see if she's okay, call out to her, or ignore her? She's probably infected like everyone else here, and as I've said, it's every man for themselves here. Sorry little girl, you're being ignored.
I realized that the girl was
There was an option to run over her, I would have done that instead.
Therefore, I decided to ignore her and continue down the street. I eventually arrived at the main road. As I suspected, the scene wasn't pretty. In every direction, I could see people either trying to fight or flee from the numerous infected. An array of dismembered corpses already littered the streets. I suddenly felt nauseous, and within a few moments I was vomiting my breakfast all over the pavement. I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and looked up to see a bus driving down the street. The number was the same as the one I usually took home. There appeared to be a lot of people on board already.
Again, trying to get into something with so many different people is just a bad thing waiting to happen. I do not want to flag down the bus, I do not want to get onto the bus. We're going to ignore it and just continue on our
I
own.
realized that getting on the crowded bus probably wasn't a good idea. If someone on board were infected, then there would have been no
That's
escape.
it, they're all gone.
As I continued down the street, I noticed several groups of people. Just across the road was a group of men with rifles. They appeared to be having fun shooting the zombies rather than trying to escape. In the alley, I could just about see a group of teenage boys armed with a variety of makeshift melee weapons. A few meters from where I was standing, a paramedic and an armed police officer were helping a wounded man, and as I glanced over my shoulder, I saw a group of survivors from my office building, heading in the same direction. I decided that it was probably best to team up with other survivors.
Oh really? See, I would have just gone up myself. Join the men with rifles, join the teenage boys, join the paramedic, or join your co-workers. There is no option just to go by yourself here. So the men with rifles seem to be having fun here, which means they're too reckless and they're probably just going to shoot me if I went with them. The teenage boys with just some melee weapons, I don't think they'd be skilled or know what the hell they're doing to go anywhere near them. I reckon that the paramedic and the police officer would want to help people, which I don't think is a good idea in this situation. At least their co-workers might know us, so might not want to just throw us under the bus or feed us to a zombie straight away? We'll join the co-workers, but I really would rather nobody.
Over to the group of my fellow co-workers. They seemed happy to see me.
This group is probably the best choice. None of them are injured, and since they know you, they are much less likely to leave you behind in a sticky situation. Okay, fair enough, although I will leave them behind in a heartbeat.
I told the group that I thought we should try to find some transportation to get out of the city center. One of them suggested we go to the parking area a few blocks down. We quickly agreed to our strategy and made our way down the street. As we approached the car parking area, we noticed a few infected wandering idly around the entrance. There was no real way to avoid them.
So there's a few infected around the entrance to this place then. Do we just run past them? Do we fight them as a group? Or do we distract them so the others can go through safely? Or do we convince one of the others to distract them? Oh, is that for me to distract? No, I won't be distracting. We will convince one of our co-workers to go distract them.
Some heated discussion. Somebody from the group eventually stepped up. He began making such a noise as he could, running in circles around the infected. My plan worked and they began to follow him away from the entrance.
Goodbye, brave but foolish man. It's all about saving your own bacon here.
We were so wrapped in what we were doing that we forgot about our brave volunteer. We never saw him again.
No, I'll bet.
We eventually found a few different options for vehicles in which we could make our escape. On the far side of the parking area, we found a pair of road motorbikes. Closer to us was a four-wheel drive all-terrain Jeep, a large freight truck, and a convertible sports car.
Do we take the motorbikes, take the Jeep, take the freight truck, or take the sports car? I don't think motorbikes would be a good idea because that would leave yourself quite open to attacks from all sides. The Jeep, quite armoured, that might be an okay choice. Freight truck also might be an okay choice. Sports car, maybe again could be too open depending on what type it is. I'm thinking either Jeep or freight truck here, and I'm more likely to say the Jeep, I would say.
I suggested that we take the Jeep, and the others quickly agreed. Having the ability to go off-road if necessary would be incredibly useful.
Oh, I didn't think about that, yeah, I suppose.
Many roads would have been blocked with traffic, accidents,
yeah.
and zombies.
No, fair enough, that seems like the logical choice.
We approached the Jeep and peered inside. To our dismay, we saw a pair of infected inside, desperately clawing at the windows in an attempt to
We'd be
escape.
better leaving them and finding the freight truck then. Suggest pulling the zombies from the Jeep. Suggest trying another vehicle instead. I think we'll just go for another vehicle. Keep out of harm's way.
Didn't listen. They really wanted that Jeep, and a few zombies.
Well, they can go open it then.
The others immediately flung open the doors and started trying to drag the zombies out. However, without my help, they were having serious trouble, and it seemed like they would most likely end up dead if I didn't intervene.
Oh boy, right. Try to help them, leave them to it, and escape on one of the motorbikes, escape in a sports car, or escape in a freight truck. In this instance, I would maybe try to help them, but knowing what would happen here is that I would end up getting infected. So really just sticking to the code of every man for themselves, I can't help them there. I don't think getting in the motorbike would do much. Sports car or the freight truck, I don't know what it is about a freight truck, I just don't think it would be an easy thing to ride. That's right, sorry chaps, I'm going in the sports car.
I headed towards the sports car and didn't look back. I climbed aboard my chosen vehicle and sped away from the car park onto the main street. By then the roads were littered with bodies and car wreckages. It was all I could do to avoid them. Everywhere I looked, I could see only scenes of carnage. It seemed that those not already infected were fighting a losing battle. My thoughts quickly turned to my wife. I tried to tell myself that she would be okay, but that didn't stop the horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew I had to get home as soon as possible. In the distance, I could see a gas station with a few of the zombies on the forecourt. I quickly glanced down at the fuel gauge and saw that I only had about half a tank remaining.
Do I fill up at the pump? Do I go into the attached convenience stores and take supplies, or do I continue down the road without stopping? If I go try fill up here, I'm going to need to take on the zombies. and same if I'm actually going to go into the store for some supplies. But if I continue down the road, I'm most likely going to run out of fuel. If I could even continue down the road, that is, if there's lots of vehicles. So there might be no point fueling up in the first place if I actually can't drive it much. So I'm reckoning just take the car as far down as possible until it runs out of fuel and then continue on foot if need be.
I decided not to stop for gas or supplies due to the potential danger. Half a gas tank was more than enough to get home anyway.
Oh, well, you could have said that to begin with there.
I continued down the road before turning onto the main highway out of town. However, it wasn't long before I noticed a mass of vehicles blocking the road ahead. The combined sound of all the honking, shouting, and screaming was deafening. Nobody had kept to their lanes, and cars were packed so closely together that not even a bicycle could squeeze through. The blockage extended so far down the road that it was literally impossible to discern what the cause was.
Do we wait patiently for the traffic jam to clear? It's not going to clear. Do we take the vehicle off-road and go around the blockage? In a sports car is maybe not a good idea. Turn around and find another route home and possibly run out of fuel. Ugh. It's either taking the vehicle off-road or it's turning around, but we could just hit traffic wherever we go if we turned around. I'm thinking just to go off-road here, but my gut's also saying take another route home. Gonna go off-road though.
Realizing that there was no point in waiting, I decided to get off the road. And drive through the open fields instead. At first I made good progress, and as my thoughts turned to my wife, I started driving faster and faster, determined to get home to her as quickly as possible. By the time I saw the old tree stump among the crops, it was already too late.
Yep.
When I awoke hours later, I realized how lucky I was to still be alive. My ride was
what an
total,
idiot.
and I wasn't much better. Several of my bones were broken, and I could barely move, let alone walk. It wasn't long before one of the infected found me, and unable to defend myself,
Oh, damn.
was slowly eaten alive.
Yep. Should have turned round. Try that again. I'm just going to go through all the same scenario, but this time I'm going to turn round on that road. We're going to turn round here then.
I decided that there was no point in waiting for the traffic to clear, and that without the Jeep, driving off the road was just too dangerous. I headed back the way I came and turned off the highway at the first exit. I soon found a safer, albeit less direct route home.
Should have done that to begin with, but at least we're back on the road and moving.
As I sped down the disturbingly quiet back road, my mind began to wander. Without the distraction of imminent danger, I began to remember the horrific scenes I had witnessed just an hour ago.
Keep your eyes on the
Images
road,
of mangled
Muppet.
corpses flashed before my eyes, and my head began to spin. I swerved onto the wrong side of the road, just as another vehicle pulled out from a concealed entrance. I braked sharply, but it was too late to avoid a collision.
We're gonna break our bones
Amazingly,
again.
I wasn't seriously injured, but my ride was badly damaged.
See if the other driver's hurt. Nope. Try to steal the other driver's car. It's probably just as totaled as ours. Try repair the vehicle. Carry on by foot.
I realized that without transport, I would have to walk the rest of the way home. Not wanting to waste any more precious time, I continued my journey on foot. After a half an hour of walking, I began to recognize my surroundings, and knew that I would soon be home. There were several different routes I could take.
Do we continue along the main road? Do we follow the train line? Do we take a shortcut through the cornfields? Or do we take a shortcut through the woods? Now, taking the main road will most likely have zombies all around the place as well. Train line, I don't know if trains would be running, or if other people would go that way as well to get away from the main kind of civilization. I don't think taking shortcuts through the woods or cornfields would be a good idea at all, because I reckon they could be in there hiding, or at least just wandering aimlessly around there. Again, my gut's saying to me to maybe just continue along the main road just to get us down there, but I'm also very aware that the infected could be there. But my gut's been wrong before, so I'm going to follow the train line this time.
I decided to get off the main road, as it would undoubtedly be dangerous in such a heavily populated area.
Exactly,
I decided
yep.
to follow the train line instead, since it ran not far from my house and would be totally deserted. Sure enough, I didn't see another soul.
Okay, good. Actually, that's not bad then.
I finally arrived in my neighborhood, exhausted. I knew that my house was just a little further down the street, but the area was swarming with the infected. Most of them seemed distracted by what few survivors remained, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they noticed me. I remembered about a small alleyway nearby, one that would take me most of the way home in relative safety. I entered the alley, and as expected, it seemed totally devoid of life. However, as I walked past a large dumpster, an infected old man stepped out of the shadows and tried to grab me.
Do I grab him by the neck and push him away? Do I grab his torso and push him away? Punch him in the face? Or throw him over your shoulder? I don't think I want to get anywhere near his mouth at all. So, although in saying that, just by pushing his torso means he might be able to lower his neck to bite me. Definitely don't want to punch him in the face. Throwing him over the shoulder I don't think would be a good move at all. I don't know how strong these infected are. Maybe grabbing them by the neck is the best option here, although that is again close to the mouth. It's either grabbing him by the neck or pushing him by his torso. Staying away from the mouth is the best option here, so I am going to grab his torso and push him away.
I grabbed his shoulder and pushed him backward, narrowly escaping being bitten. I had bought myself valuable time, but it wouldn't take long for the creature to regain its balance and come at me again. I turned to run back the way I had came, only to see that another group of them had followed and were now blocking my retreat. My only hope was to try and get past the lone infected.
Why didn't you run past it to begin with? Well, now we need to grab a brick and throw it at his head, grab a brick and hit him in the head with it when he gets close enough, or just try to run past him. Trying to run past him is not going to work. We're going to need to do something to his head, and I reckon that even though we throw the brick, we could either miss or it might not be enough force to actually knock him down. So I reckon we need to get him close enough to hit him in the head with the brick.
Grabbing a brick, I waited just long enough for the infected to get close before smashing it into his face. There was a sickening crack as his jawbone fractured and blood sprayed from his mouth. My former neighbor fell to the ground, and before he could get back up, I was able to run past. I sped down the alley and back onto the street. When I looked over my shoulder, there was no sign of my pursuers. I could see my house now, just 100 feet or so away. My heart sank when I saw yet another group of infected wandering aimlessly between me and my goal.
Do we try to sneak past them? Do we try to run past them? Do we try to go through the neighbour's rear gardens? I don't think running past them will help, because that will alert them to us and might make them follow us. Sneaking past might be an okay idea, or trying to go through the neighbour's rear gardens, which might be a longer way through them, but at least it avoids detection altogether, unless there's obviously zombies in the rear gardens there. But it's certainly a safer idea than having them see you at all, so we'll try go through the neighbour's rear gardens.
I decided that it was too dangerous to carry on down the street. I went around the back of one of the neighbors' houses, and climbed over the fence into their garden. It was tiring, but I carried on scrambling over the fences, until I got to my own backyard. I approached the house. I noticed the glass in the back door had been smashed, and the door left slightly ajar. I was terrified for my wife's safety.
So most likely one of the infected has already gotten into the house, or our wife and child have already been infected. I don't know if we've got a child, I've maybe just decided that we have a child, but they've maybe already been infected and have left the house. So I think it would be better to arm ourselves before we go into the house, although there could be a zombie in the shed, but it's better to try at least get a weapon before just going into the house.
I realized that whoever had broken into the house could still be in there, and without a weapon, I wouldn't be able to help my wife. I headed over to the shed and checked my pockets. Luckily, I still had my keys and was able to remove the padlock and open the door. Inside, there was a wide range of tools to choose from.
Do we take the chainsaw? Do we take the sledgehammer? Do we take the crowbar? Or do we take the hand axe? Chainsaw only works if we have fuel. Sledgehammer is a big heavy tool, but not going to be great indoors in such a small space. Crowbar might not be a bad thing, nor would the hand axe. It's a toss-up between the crowbar and the hand axe, and I'm thinking the hand axe might be a bit more sharp. Well, at least I would hope it would be sharp. Maybe it would be a blunt hand axe. Oh, do I go Gordon Freeman on them, or do I take the hand axe? I'm thinking I'm going Gordon Freeman, or taking the crowbar.
I took the crowbar, knowing that it would be easy to swing indoors, yet still heavy enough to cave in a human skull. With my weapon in hand, I left the shed and walked back to my house. Before I could enter, I discovered why the back door had been left ajar. A teenage looter emerged from the house carrying my television, obviously intent on profiting from the crisis. When he saw me, he dropped the TV and pulled out a large kitchen knife. At that moment, I couldn't tell which one of us was more afraid.
Do we attack the looter or let him go? I'm not sure the best course of action here. For my own survivability, he could easily stab me as I tried to hit him. It might be better to kind of reason and just let him go. He can take the television. I don't think there's going to be anything on for quite some time.
I told the looter that I wasn't going to hurt him, and that he could take the TV and go. He didn't bother to pick it back up. Instead, he ran over to the nearby fence and climbed over into the neighbor's garden. Having dealt with the looter, I walked in through the back door. I was relieved to finally be safely indoors, but I couldn't rest yet. Not until I was certain my wife was okay.
So, do I search the house for her? Do I lock the back door? Or do I barricade the back door? Now, I don't know if there's any point locking or barricading the house if there could be zombies inside here, although if there was zombies in here, maybe they would have already gotten the looter. So, it might not be a bad call to barricade the door just so that nothing follows us in, especially because zombies may have seen that teenager jump over the fence and come out of her house. I don't think locking the back door will be enough to keep them out. Barricading I think is the way to go. I'm still a bit worried though that there could be zombies already in the house in terms of my family, and I'm basically just sealing myself in if this is the case. But again, going with my gut and saying barricading the back door here.
I quickly shut the back door and locked it, then looked around for some furniture to wedge in front of it. It took me a few minutes to properly secure the entrance, but at least I knew nobody would be able to force their way in.
Yes.
I began searching the ground floor for my wife. As I came into the living room, I saw that John from next door was standing there. He had his back to me, and was clearly oblivious to my presence. His shirt
He's
was
most
covered in
likely
red
infected.
stains.
Do we attack him with your weapon, see if he's okay, back away slowly and hope he doesn't notice you? Now, he might not be infected, but just for someone to be standing there not doing anything is a bit strange in these circumstances. He could have just killed our family as well, whether he is infected or just gone a bit crazy during this. I don't want to see if he's okay. I think calling out to him at all here is a bad move. Attacking him might draw a lot of attention as well, depending on how we attack him. If it's a quick strike to the back of the head, that could take him out very quickly here, whether he's infected or not. Or if he's not infected, he could be looking after the family, and that's the first thing they see. Someone could have helped us here, and I've just killed him. Back away slowly and hope he doesn't notice you either. But do what? If we do that, what do we do instead? We're still looking for our family, we're going to need to pass them at some point. I just don't think someone would be just standing in the living room, not saying anything, not moving, not doing anything unless they've just done something or are about to do something. I get the feeling he's already infected. Plus, why wouldn't he have noticed the teenager either? Going to attack him.
John was surely infected, so I snuck up behind him and hit him as hard as I could on the back of the head. His skull made a satisfying crack and he fell to the floor, dead. I had never liked him much anyway.
Oh well, there you go. No loss. Goodbye, John.
As I went to go upstairs, I noticed a note had been left for me by the front door. I recognized my wife's handwriting immediately. The note said that she couldn't wait for me any longer and that she was going to pack her bags and take the car to her parents' house in the countryside.
Probably a wise move.
My heart sank. I prayed that she would be able to make it to her parents in one piece, but knowing how hard it had been for me to get here, I couldn't help but wonder if she was still alive.
Also a very
When I
valid
realized I
point.
may never see her again, I began to feel tears rolling down my cheek.
Do we leave the house and head for the countryside, or do we continue searching the house? The house is barricaded, so we could search for some more supplies which might be helpful and then go look for her. I think that's the best option here, to continue looking. Maybe she could be in the house still. Infected or not, but we might be able to find something in the house before we head out.
I pulled myself together and resolved to keep searching. I needed to make sure the house was secure before planning my next move. As I climbed the stairs, I heard an odd shuffling noise coming from my bedroom. I didn't know if it was my wife, a looter, or another of the infected.
Do we burst in with our weapon ready? Do we knock on the door and ask who's in there? Do we slowly open the door and enter cautiously? Although it's not the option I may have chosen right to begin with, but just knocking on the door and asking if there's anyone in there will either allow someone to respond, or if it's an infected, for us to learn very quickly that it's an infected, because I'm assuming they would bang on the door back. At least that door is still some form of protection for us to get our guard up before they come out. I don't think bursting in weapon ready would help if there are infected in there, and again slowly opening the door, same kind of issue there, although better than just bursting in. So I think it's a stupid idea in principle, but knocking the door first just to see what's potential in there might not be a bad call.
I walked over to the door slowly and gently knocked as I called out to whoever was inside.
Don't gently knock.
My reply was a scream and a call for help. It was my wife's voice. I swung open the door and went inside.
Okay.
The scene that greeted me will haunt my nightmares for years to come. My beautiful wife was pinned on the floor, desperately trying to fight off one of the infected. She could barely keep the creature at bay, and if I didn't act immediately, she would surely die.
Why was the door closed? Who closed the door? And if it was the wife that closed the door, where did the infected come in from? And how long has she been there? She might already be infected as well. We're going to need to hit the infected on the head immediately here, I think. I don't think there's any other option. We're definitely not running away, and I don't know if kicking it is going to help much either. Just hit it straight away. Please don't miss.
Wasting no time at all, I smashed the infected over the head with my weapon. I was lucky not to hit my wife by mistake, but at least she was alive. I was finally reunited with my wife. I dropped the weapon and held her as tightly as I could.
He's going to be infected.
In that moment, I was happier than I had ever been, yet the feeling would not last long. I asked her if she was okay, and she showed me her hand. Blood dripped from several bite marks on her fingers. I didn't know if she would become infected or not, or even how much longer she had. She sobbed as I struggled to decide what to do.
Wow, okay. Do we take her with you? Do we cut off her fingers and take her with you? Do we leave her, or do we kill her? Blood dripped from several bite marks on her fingers. It depends on how quickly this thing spreads once you're infected. So we could cut off the fingers, or that could just be even more salt on the wound. She's going to die anyway, and this could just be absolutely horrendous to cut her fingers off and then she still dies. But we need to do something. You know, we're not going to leave her, and we're not going to kill her. Not until she at least turns. I'm thinking maybe to cut off her fingers here, because that might be enough to stop the infection spreading more, depending on how fresh it was. But this might be a lost cause already here.
I knew I had to do something and do it quickly. If I could stop the spread of the infection, I might just be able to save her life. We ran down to the kitchen, took a clean meat cleaver from the knife rack, and tied an improvised tourniquet around her wrist. Within seconds it was over, and I was carefully dressing the wounds with bandages from our first aid kit. I didn't know if she would survive or not, but at least now we had hope. My wife and I spent some time discussing what to do next. We realized that we couldn't stay in the house forever, as it was just too dangerous this close to civilization. We decided that our best bet was to load up the car with food and supplies, and then head for her parents' house out in the country. I made sure the house was secure, dragged the corpses down to the basement, and then helped my wife get everything ready. She looked pale and weak, but it didn't seem like she would turn, at least not for a while yet. By the time everything was ready, it was already nightfall, so we decided to spend one more night at home before hitting the road. I don't think either of us slept that night, but it was better than traveling in the dark. We left at dawn.
To be continued. Well then, so we survived the day, and we saved our wife as well. We got a rank A for our tactics, your knowledge of zombie outbreaks is unmatched, and your survival skills have been honed to a razor-like edge. You'd almost certainly survive a real outbreak. Our compassion was a rank C. You were once a kind person, but the outbreak has forced you to become somewhat self-centered. I honestly think it's the best way to be, because everyone else normally is self-centered as well. And that's just the way that it has to be. You just have to self-preservation. With this, you can be compassionate to a point, but you just need to keep the head, otherwise you'll lose your own head. Oh well, there you go then. I really like these type of games actually. I like these kind of decision games. I think there's more of this series, and I will be more than happy to play it if you've kind of enjoyed watching this one. But this has been Dead Frontier. It is a little flash game on Congregate. It'll be in the description if you wish to play it yourself and see if you could be more compassionate than I was with this one, certainly. Thanks for watching guys. I'll see you in the next one.